I'm Becky Scott. I'm a staff member at the Allegheny Highlands Regional Library, and because I'm a retired English teacher, I have chosen to do some writing classes. In our first session, we talked about keeping a gratitude journal, where you learn to think and write about things that you are grateful for. If you did our first session and did a gratitude journal, you may want to dig it out, because some of the things that you wrote down may be some of the things you want to draw from today when we talk about writing our own autobiography. In case I forget to say it later, I do have a graphic organizer. English teachers love graphic organizers, and these are just simply representations of things to help you think about doing your writing. In English teacher speak, we would call these graphic organizers, or we would call them pre-writing. So attached to this video, there will be a link with an autobiography timeline, and I entitled it, I Want to Talk About Me. And anybody who's a country music fan recognizes that's a song by Toby Keith from several years ago. Well, you know, we all like to talk about ourselves every now and then. We do need to focus on other people. We do need to be grateful for the things that they give us and show us. But it is sometimes about ourselves as well. So what I suggest you do to write your autobiography is to think about your timeline. My Aunt Margie says that everybody has a story. And sometimes when I talk to people about writing, they'll say, well, I don't have anything to say. Yes, you do. You just haven't thought about what you need to say. So it's a 2-page graphic organizer, or if you want a 2-page chart that just helps you to organize your life. And of course, anytime you're talking about a timeline, you're talking about starting at birth and going all the way to the present. And I won't say death, because we're not dead. We've still got a whole lot of living to do, even if you're my age. So what you do on the graphic organizer, and if you don't want to pull it up and you don't want to download it, again, just get a piece of paper. Start with dates. Be as specific as you can, but again, when you get older, sometimes it's hard to remember. When was that? What year was that? What was I doing then? But as much as possible, start with the date. And of course, the first place to start is your birth. Put the date down, your entire birthday. Include important things like, where was your birthplace? Where were you born? Who were your parents? Who were your siblings? Maybe your grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Maybe there were people very early in your life you figured in. Add them in, because the more details you can put in your timeline and the more organized you can make it, the easier it's going to be to write your story. Our summer reading theme is called Imagine Your Story. We literally want you to imagine your story, because each person does have a story to tell. So after you start with your birth, then you move on to your important childhood events. Your story is not my story. Your story will not match up with mine. What was important to me may not be important to you. But think about specific dates, and if you can't remember specific, it was Monday, June 1st, 1972. And some of you weren't even born then, I realize that. But if you don't know specific dates, give it a specific, something specific that helps you remember when it was. This was the year my little sister was born. This was the year that the snake ran across my foot, and forever since then I've been afraid of snakes. Most of the time, the things that we talk about in autobiographies are positive things. But let's face it, if you've lived any time at all, there are also negative. And sometimes those negative events have as much impact or more impact on our lives than the positive things. So think about your important childhood events. Maybe it's the birth of a brother or a sister. Maybe your grandpa died. Maybe your dog ran away. Maybe you had that absolutely awesome birthday party that you'll never forget. When you think back over your childhood, what sticks out in your mind? If you were telling a story of your childhood to a younger person, to a child, what would you tell? What events would you mention? Now, it's your autobiography. If there are things that are too intensely personal or painful to talk about, don't do it. It's your story. You get to put in it what you want to put in it. So think about your important childhood events. Another important part of childhood is starting elementary school. Maybe the first week you cried every day. Maybe the first day you were so happy to be there because you were one of the big kids. Maybe you got into a fight over the playground over who got to swing first. Maybe you had that awesome teacher who just made you love learning. Or on the flip side, maybe you had that absolutely horrible old lady who made you hate going to school. Think about your important school events. Because again, when you think about the time that you spend from the time you're 4 or 5 years old and you start kindergarten, or if you're an old lady like me and you start first grade, all the way through 12th grade, the bulk of your formative years are spent with your parents and in school. So think about those important childhood events, and especially those important school events. I made a best friend when I started first grade who is still my best friend more than 50 years later, which is an absolutely awesome thing to say. I also had a couple of really good friends that in high school we had a fight and we've never really reconnected since. So those are things to consider in your autobiography. As you move on beyond your elementary years, think about your early teen years. Sometimes those memories are intensely painful. I'm old, but I remember as a teenage girl, everything hurt. So a lot of my teen years are not positive memories, but negative memories. And maybe yours are too. And maybe not. Maybe you were blessed to have good teen years and you never had a pimple and you never had any self-doubts and criticisms and all those things. And if you were very blessed. But if you weren't, then that's okay too, because those turn into learning experiences. So again, you're jotting down the dates, as much as you can possibly remember, and the memories from the teen years, both the positive and the negative. Then you move to the high school years, and as a high school English teacher for many, many years, I saw students say, oh, I can't wait to get out of this school, I hate this place, I hate everybody and everything connected. And then when they graduate, they come back and they say, well, you know, I realized it really wasn't quite so bad. And maybe you're the same way. Maybe you had an absolutely horrible high school period, and maybe you didn't. For most people, I think we have good times and we have bad times. So consider the good times and the bad times and what you did in your high school years. That is part of makes you who you really are. You can't talk about your teen years and your high school years without talking about that special someone. I think when you talk to people, everybody has a first love. Not everybody wants to talk about a first love. Some people were blessed enough to marry their first love and spend the rest of their lives with them, and some people weren't. And then, of course, there's always the one who got away, and that person will haunt you when you're as old as I am. So think about that special someone. Maybe it was the boy your parents wouldn't let you date, or maybe it was the boy next door that all of a sudden you realized, wow, he's pretty hot. So you need to think about those special people that you had an emotional and loving connection with who made your heart go pity-pat. After the high school years, of course, we move into college and career. So this is where your story, again, will probably be totally different from my story. I moved on to college, and so I have a higher education blank for you to fill in. If you didn't have a higher education blank, skip it. It doesn't matter. Or maybe your higher education was the school of life and you went straight to work and you learned on the job. You learned hands-on, and that's perfectly okay. But again, the purpose of the timeline is to try to put as specific as possible your dates, the people who were involved, the places who were involved, the things that developed you into the person that you are today. So consider higher education, consider your career. Maybe you started flipping burgers at Wendy's, and that's great. That's a good job skill. But then you moved on. Maybe you're one of these people who was a free spirit and you didn't want to settle down to a college and career. Again, it's your story. Imagine your story. Most people who are in their 20s or beyond will have marriage or significant relationships, and those are always a big part of your story. So if you are to the age where you're going to have a significant relationship, you need to add that. Again, be specific in your dates, in the people who were involved, the places, the things that developed your relationship and developed you into the person you were becoming. Children. Did you have children? How did that go? You know, when you first have them and they're the bundle of joy, and then they turn into the ball and chain around your legs sometimes, and that's okay. Because we live in an imperfect world with children who love us, but at the same time test our patience. So talk about your children if you have children. If you don't have children, maybe that's something that also significantly impacted you. Maybe you couldn't have children. Maybe you chose not to have children. And again, that's a part of who you are, so think about children. As is the case in everything that I do in writing, you need to talk about the setbacks and the difficult situations. And again, if it's something that's intensely emotional or personal and you don't want people to know it, keep it to yourself. It's your story. You get to say and talk about what you want to talk about. So talk about the setbacks and difficult situations. And bring your timeline and your autobiography all the way up to the present. What's going on now? Now what? What do you anticipate? What do you hope for? What do you wish you'd done differently? If you were to go back and do it all over again, what would you change? What wouldn't you change? What's important to you? The purpose of an autobiography is to talk about yourself, because I do want to talk about me. And you do too, probably, because we're all important. We all have our skills and our thoughts and our abilities and things that make us unique and different, and that we can share with other people and maybe make a difference in their lives. So you think about it. You write your autobiography. You think about what makes you you. And then imagine your story. And that's how you write your autobiography. If you will join me the next time, we're going to talk about not writing about me, but we're going to talk about writing about other people. Have a good day.